Hello and welcome to Wild Earth Ways. I'm Kat and today's video is going to be a reflections video on the month of May. So the books I've read, the decks I've used and the journals I've been writing in this month. I really enjoy this kind of video from other people, watching other people's videos on what they've been reading and reading with it through the month, or how they've been writing in their journals. And so I thought I would have a go at making one this month, and if it works out, making it a regular series on the channel. I'm going to leave timestamps down below with the times at which the three sections begin. So I'm going to go books, decks, journals. So if one section interests you more than another, you can check the timestamps and skip ahead to where you want to begin. And with that said, I'm going to begin with books. So I'm going to clear this massive stuff out of the way and take you through the books which I've read this month. Okay, so to tell you about books, I'm going to first explain about this book here, My Hobonichi Cousin for 2025. And this is a book which I'm using as a reading journal and also a creative journal. So I set it up with the intention of studying and practicing poetry in the daily pages of the journal. And I also track my reading in this journal. So I'll show you the reading tracker for this month. So this is the month of May, and all I do on these kind of monthly pages in the journal is say when I finished a book and when I began a book. And you can see that I have a kind of pattern, which is that I do most of my reading at the end of the week and at the weekend. So actually, in my country, we start work on a Sunday. So Sunday is the first day of the week and the week runs through to Friday. And so a lot of my reading takes place here at the weekend, which is why I often begin and finish books here and not on the days like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, when I'm very busy at work. So this year I have been working 150% at my job, so it has left me with less time for reading and other creative pursuits. I'm also a mother, I have young children, so with a lot of work and children to care for, I haven't done as much reading in the past year as in the past. But still, I think actually looking at May, I did a fair amount of reading this month. So the first book I finished was The Well of Ascension. So I must have begun that in April. So I can see I actually began that on the 17th of April and I finished it on the 1st of May. This is the book, Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. It's the second book in the Mistborn trilogy. It's a fantasy adventure book. I read the first one, which I now can't remember what it's called, The Final Empire, a while back, and then I got The Well of Ascension and the last one in the series, The Hero of Ages, for my birthday. By request, because I did enjoy the first one, The Final Empire, and I also enjoyed this one, but I don't have an awful lot to say about it. It's a pretty straightforward kind of fantasy adventure, which is set in another world in which the land has been covered by a kind of mist, which has sort of changed the ecology, the environment, and there are people who have special abilities. So they have the ability to kind of draw certain strengths and skills from using metals in their body. So the main character, whose name is Vin, just remembering, she is one of these people who can draw power from metals. And I particularly enjoyed the first book in the series because of the twists and unexpected plot and the logic of the book. I do find the magical system, although I admire its coherence and its logical structure, I do find it a little bit tiresome sometimes when they're describing the different fight scenes in which the characters kind of burning different metals. It does get a little bit technical, but on the whole, I thought this was a really good read. And I have my review of it here on this page. I didn't have an awful lot to say about it, so I kind of have a bunch of stickers there as well. I gave this one a 7.6 out of 10. I use the core pile rating system. I think it's normally out of 5, but in my case, I do it out of 10. And so I gave this one 7 for character, 7 for atmosphere, just 6 for writing. The writing's a bit basic. Plot, 8. Very well plotted. Intrigue, 8. Logic, 9. I do actually think that the book is very well structured and thought out. And enjoyment, 8. So that's a pretty good score in my rating system. And you can see that the date on which I wrote the entry is not the date on which I finished the book. So in this book I am behind, and I'm just filling it in regardless of the actual date. So after I finished Well of Ascension, I read Howard's End. Howard's End is a novel by E.M. Forster. I had read this one before, but many years ago. And I'd also seen a TV series of it, which I really enjoyed. And I picked this up secondhand when I was in England in last February. I'm just going to talk about it very briefly because I had pretty mixed feelings about this book. In many ways, it feels extremely dated. It was written in the early 20th century, and the class system is kind of everywhere in the book. On the other hand, there's some very beautiful writing, interesting writing about music. If you're interested in how to write about music, I think Ian Forster approaches it in an interesting way. I have a certain nostalgic affection for this book. So let's see, I gave this book a 7.7. The characters are really well written and extremely believable, with the exception of the most working class characters. So I think E.M. Forster was good at writing the kind of upper middle class characters, less so the more working class characters. Atmosphere 8 and writing 9. The writing's obviously a strength of the book. Plot 7, intrigue 6, not much intrigue. Logic 8 and enjoyment 7. I did really feel that kind of early 20th century time period now feels very distant, and even more so than when you read books from the 19th century and earlier. And I don't really have an explanation for that. I guess it's kind of too close to be completely distant and romanticized, but on the other hand, it's really different from the world we live in now. And it created a little bit of tension for me as I was reading it this time. So it took me a week to read Howard's End, and after I finished it, I began Piranesi. And you can see I finished Piranesi on the next day. So I don't work Fridays. Friday and Saturday are our weekend. And so I basically just spent the entire day reading this book, Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I think it came out in 2020. Yes, it was published in 2020. It's pretty well known, and I came across it and picked it up because of seeing a YouTube video, somebody talking about it on YouTube, and I wish I could remember who it was now, and I'm afraid I can't. But it was somebody I was watching on YouTube. They recommended this book, and I thought it sounded really interesting. Susanna Clarke also wrote Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which was a very successful novel based around magic. And I did not finish that novel when I tried to read it. And it was such a long time ago, I do not remember the reason. It was a much bigger book than this one, but Piranesi, I just gulped it down. I thought it was a beautiful read, and it's a very interesting book for those of us interested in tarot and imagery and symbolism. So in this novel, Piranesi, the main character, who is known as Piranesi, although he knows that that's not his actual name, he is living in a building which is made up of a series of vast halls interconnected, and the halls are all full of statues. And the building has 3 floors. On the ground floor, the sea washes through the building, and there are also many seabirds. and he can fish for food. And then on the third floor, it's connected to the sky. And so you have always this kind of sea and wind moving through the book, and the sculptures. So he sometimes reads the symbolism of the sculptures to interpret what's happening to him in his life, which did somewhat remind me of tarot. And there's just one other person who lives in the building, except we quickly realize he doesn't live there. He's visiting from somewhere else. And I won't give away too many spoilers because it's beautifully plotted and really a gripping page turner, as well as very well written. And it also is a book with a very satisfying ending, which I appreciate because sometimes in these kind of weird fictions, you sometimes get very unsatisfying endings where not everything is explained or you're not happy with how it gets resolved. And I thought Susanna Clarke really resolved the book very powerfully. And I love the connection she makes between the kind of archetypal imagery of the statues and ordinary people in the real world, which is certainly something that we think about when we read tarot, I think. So Piranesi I gave an 8.4, which is pretty high. So I gave it character 8, atmosphere 10. The atmosphere is amazing. Writing 9, which is very high for me, so I think the writing was very good. Plot 8, intrigue 8, logic 7, and enjoyment 9. A little bit lower on the logic, just because the fantasy elements of it are explained in a somewhat logical way, but I wasn't completely convinced by the logic. But it wasn't so much as to at all damage my enjoyment of the book. I thought it was a wonderful book. So after speed reading my way through Piranesi, I decided to slow down a little bit and read some non-fiction. So I picked up this book, The Tarot, History, Symbolism and Divination by Robert M. Place. I've read this book before, so it was already on my shelf. And I wanted to remind myself of what he explains about the tarot in this book. This is a book I really recommend for getting a picture of the history of tarot and how that has shaped the iconography. So he talks about Renaissance Italy and the imagery and the different ways in which the mystical imagery of the tarot came from that culture, from the culture which was exploring and creating and changing and sharing and changing again these kind of images of, for example, connection between above and below, or binaries and unity, or different virtues like strength and temperance. He, I think, brings a wealth of information and knowledge to explaining the tarot imagery in this book. And he has a real gift for simplifying complex ideas, like, say, for example, Neoplatonism, giving us a really clear sense of what is meant by Neoplatonism and how that applies to the tarot. I don't 100% agree with everything that he writes in this book, but I do find it to be a very useful historical context for understanding both the Marseille and the Waite-Smith imagery. I read the first half pretty carefully and I just skimmed through the second half. So the first half of this book is explaining a kind of a history of the tarot and how people have told and retold that history, and where we do actually find certain symbolism, concepts arising from. And then he moves on from there to explaining the origins of the Waite-Smith tarot. And in the last part of the book, he does a card-by-card analysis of the Waite-Smith tarot. So this is the part that I just kind of skimmed through on rereading this book. And I did feel that it was worth a reread, and he writes very clearly. So if you're looking for a book on the history of tarot, I for sure think that this is a great starting place. And then the rest of the month, I did begin this book, Animal Studies, which I talked about in my video on looking at animals. I didn't finish that book, so I haven't brought it here. And I probably am not going to finish that book. I met the same problems with this book as I met the first time I tried to read it, which was several years ago, which is that the book just stays very general and vague. Lots of concepts and intentions to explore ideas, and yet doesn't actually get into any kind of real detail or storytelling or criticism, at least in the first chapters. And so I kind of lost patience with the sort of vague generalities. And again, I did stop reading that book. I don't know if I will keep it or if I'm going to give that one away at some point. And so the last book which I've been reading this month, you can see I began on the 18th, but I haven't yet finished, and that is Adam Bede by George Eliot. I love George Eliot. I have read quite a few of her books, and some of them several times. So I particularly love Middlemarch and Daniel Deronda. But this is the first time I've read Adam Bede. Again, it's one I picked up in a charity shop in the UK, and I'm really, really enjoying it. I think her writing is beautiful. It's very dreamy in this particular book. I don't think it's heading in a great direction though. I'm halfway through, so I suspect the crisis lies ahead of me in this novel, so I don't want to say too much about it at this point. So maybe I'll finish that before the end of the month, but otherwise I'll finish it in the start of June. And then the last book I've been reading this month is this one, Japanese Women Poets, an anthology edited and translated by Hiroaki Sato. Now, this book doesn't appear on this page because I have neither finished it, nor did I begin it in this month. I began it way earlier in the year, and then I kind of slowed down, stopped, and picked it up again. So I think I'm about halfway through at the moment. What can I say about this book? It's completely fascinating. It's really astonishing to me that there are poems and biographies of the female poets from as long ago as 712 CE. And you get these insights into people's lives from, over 1,000 years ago. So if I compare this to medieval European poetry, there's such a huge difference. It's astonishing to me because we have very little poetry from medieval Europe which we can attribute to women. And a lot of the poetry that we have from medieval Europe is anonymous and may have been written by women. It's a possibility, but there's a kind of anonymous communal aspect to medieval poetry, whereas these poems often come with some knowledge of the lives of the poets, and they're really beautiful. They give you these little insights into people's lives from so long ago. So having said that, I immediately fall upon a poem by someone who we don't know who she was, except that she was a member of the Koranaga family. This is from around the 9th century, and it reads that she was a lonely woman, often a wife left behind by her husband on a military expedition. And we get lines like this: by lamplight in my room with scissors and measure I mark the lengths, put a thread through a needle's eye, weeping and make a knot. Resentful I sew clothes for you 10,000 li away. Be not suspicious because I've made the ways different from the past. Last night you entered my dream, face emaciated. So I have to read this book quite slowly to take in the imagery, the moments that are shared in the book. In some ways, it's kind of hard to know how to read it. So especially when you have long collections of haiku or short poems. So I'll give you an example. The poems of Princess Shikishi, who died in 1201. The poems are beautiful. And I love the way in which the kind of the traditional object imagery to represent different times of the year, different seasons, brings the world of these poets very physically to life, because you have like so many things, like actual physical things, that you can have a sense of their world very clearly. And yet, reading these kind of poems, one after another, is very difficult. Like it's difficult for me to know how to do that. And the translation is unusual. So the translator, Hiroaki Sato, he translates haiku, for example, in lines, just as single lines. He doesn't use line breaks where there were not line breaks in the Japanese originals. So, for example, here, this is a 100 poem set by Shikishi, and it begins like this. Peak snow of the past year still in the sky. It's hazy on one side in spring's path. And then the next poem, mountain deep, pine door is unaware of spring. On it, intermittently dripping, snow's water beads. And so we get these very kind of crystal clear images, one after another. This for me is a little challenging to read one after another, so I have to read it quite slowly and think about what the meaning is. I'm especially aware that I miss an awful lot of the meanings of Japanese poetry because I'm just not so knowledgeable of it, and I don't speak Japanese, and I've never been to Japan. I read it as a complete outsider. I did read Hiroaki Sato's book on haiku earlier this year, which gave me a lot of insight into haiku, but it also made me realize how much I don't know. So some of the interpretations of haiku in the book are so extraordinary to me, like I would never have seen it if I didn't read his interpretation, that it really revealed to me the extent of my ignorance. And yet I am still enjoying these poems very much. I think I've reached the 19th century, and I must say that the more recent poems I've especially enjoyed. So from the 18th century on, I found them to be, what can I say? What is it I like about them? I feel like they are like journal entries in poem form. Often it's this window onto a moment in time, which is now long past, which is what's so beautiful about them. So I'll just give you one example. This is by the poet Emma Seiko, who died in 1861 and wrote many beautiful poems. This one is called Sleepless on a Moonlit Night. The autumn night, limpid, often startles me out of dreams. Among the trees a crow calls, twice, 3 times. The clepsydra, rather slow, adds to my collar's cold. The sputtering lamp darkens, making the window light. A couplet in this idleness I manage to get. All feelings are spawned while on the pillow, tossing, turning, sleepless, thinking of an old friend. I happen to see the moon, clear, close to the roof. So in this translation, at least, I get a very, very clear image of the poet's experience, and the simplicity of the image just brings visually for me very clearly that moonlit night in which the poet is struggling to sleep. Like I said, I think I miss an awful lot. To me, I see kind of a simple moment perfectly captured in time, and probably there are all kinds of other meanings connected with the poetic tradition and the language that they're using. But still, I'm enjoying this book very much. I'm halfway through, so I don't know how much longer it's going to take me to complete. A while, I would guess. I'm not so keen on this cover. I'm thinking of covering it, but I guess at the cover, the intention of the artwork on the cover is to show both classical and modern in one image. So that's it for books this month. Let's dive into decks. So I've been using mostly 2 deck pairings this month, and this is the first one, the Heartwood Tarot and the Thistledown Oracle. I've spoken about these on my last couple of videos where I was talking about animals, and I talked about how much I love this deck, the Heartwood deck, which is, both of these are new to me this year. So these are the only decks I've bought so far this year. And also they're the first decks I've added after quite a long time of not adding new decks into my collection. And the Heartwood and the Thistledown, of course, are created by Stephanie Burrows, and the beautiful artwork is by Adam Ohlers. And I spoke in my previous video about how the imagery of the Heartwood Tarot is both very nostalgic for me, bringing up imagery from like childhood books with animals, especially mice and other kind of British woodland animals, and at the same time it actually goes quite deep. I think that the kind of the abandoned cottage and the way in which they've worked with the different tarot meanings creates for some quite deep readings. And of course the 2 decks work together perfectly. So usually when I'm doing a reading with this deck, or actually pretty much always, I draw 3 tarot cards and 1 oracle card. I found that the Heartwood tarot reads extremely well, and I do like the kind of gentle tone of the Thistledown Oracle in particular. It's quite a restful deck. You can see these kind of images, calm, making space, and so on. And there's something very dreamy about the Heartwood deck. You can see it in this strange image for the 8 of Wands, in which we've got the wands and we've got these fish swimming through like a flooded, deserted building. And here we have these books pierced through with swords, and yet like these butterflies fluttering around them. It feels very, very much like a dream. And I also am interested in like the spatial representation. I wonder if the artist had a sense of what the whole building could look like, or if they just created it spontaneously as though the building kind of grows around the characters. In a way, I feel like it's growing around them. So it has a certain, in that sense, kind of similar to the Piranesi novel. And I meant to mention, as I was talking about Piranesi, how much it reminded me of the novel House of Leaves. It's a sort of fantasy horror novel about a family who move into this house, and how the house kind of grows and grows and grows with these sort of labyrinthine rooms which you can get entangled in. Not to say that this cottage is like that, but it is a strange place. Like here we have a chocolate cake, and it's not completely fallen to dust, so someone must have put that there somewhat recently, but now it's growing mushrooms. And you have like burning candles. So there is signs of some human activity in this place, but it's very mysterious. And I'm not worrying about that too much in my readings. Like I thought that when I first saw the imagery from this deck, I thought it was a little strange and I wouldn't know how to interpret that. What I mean is the mixture between the sense that the cottage is abandoned and the signs that it is not abandoned. But I think it just adds to the intrigue and atmosphere of the deck. And I've certainly enjoyed my first encounters with it, and I'm looking forward to working with it more in the future. So that is the lovely Heartwood Tarot and Thistledown Oracle. And the other deck pair that I've been trying out this month is this one, the Ad Orbiter and the Terror Oracle deck. So the Ad Orbiter Tarot is by Nicole Rallis, who also created the Ophidia Rosa and the Pythia Botanica. I don't have those decks. This is the only deck by her that I have. It's an independent deck. I bought this one directly from her website, which I believe is called Layla and Olive. The production of this deck is very nice. It has this kind of rose petal finish, so it's a little bit sticky to shuffle, and it has this bronze gold gilding, which is very soft to the touch, so this actually feels quite pleasant to use. And then the imagery is a mixture of botanicals and other kind of nature-inspired imagery. So the tagline of the deck is a tarot deck from the soil to the stars, which is a really nice summary of the deck, because you can see that it takes you through the solar system, the sky, and the sea in the cups, as well as having these florals, especially in the wands and the pentacles. And I very much enjoy this deck. I think it takes some work to read, to understand, and yet you do get a kind of atmospheric reading intuitively. So, for instance, I've had readings from the deck this month which were very much full of movement and very much in the solar system rather than grounded on the earth, and so giving me this sense of kind of somewhat out of control movement, which was interesting for me to think about. I didn't have any watery cards in my readings this month. And you can see that the color scheme is very limited, so it's quite muted. Some of the cards are just black and white on this kind of tea-stained background. Some of them use limited color, like this teal, dull teal color in the cups. And then some of the flowers have these kind of pinkish tones. I paired this deck with the Terra. So the Terra Oracle deck is an animal deck of 100 animal cards, and they are all these black and white ink drawings. So artistically, I feel it goes quite well with the Ad Orbita because of them both being kind of ink sketches, pen and ink sketches. And I found that the Animal Oracle deck could help kind of ground the more spacey, spacious imagery in the Ad Orbita. So for me, animals are very much connected with the earth, and a lot of these cards are sort of taking off into space, as you can see here. So I quite enjoyed reading these together, and I think I'll continue to try it out. I also enjoy reading this deck alone, and similarly this deck alone. I don't always pair them up together, but I do think as a pair they worked quite well, and I would definitely use it again after this month. If you're interested in this deck, I saw that the creators are coming out with a second edition with some changes, and that is going to be available on their Etsy shortly. There is also a really good guidebook with this deck. This is it, and the guidebook gives you both interpretations, and it roots the interpretations really closely to the animal itself. So they've really thought carefully about what the animal's life is like in order to give advice. So that is the Terra Oracle deck and the Ad Orbita Tarot. And to be honest, I feel like I haven't done that much with Tarot and Oracle this month. Like I said at the beginning, I've just been working too much, actually, and I've had very little time and energy left at the end of the day for this particular kind of activity. So I am hoping that next year I'll be able to reduce my workload to just 100%, just full time, because 150 has been really hard to manage. even though I do enjoy my work and I find a lot of value in it, you can have too much of a good thing. So I hope that soon I'll be able to make adjustments that are going to help me to have a bit more time and energy for creativity and for exploring like my whole self rather than just parts of myself. And finally, I thought I would say a word about journaling. I've been using a number of different journals this year. So I started the year with this one, the Hobonichi Cousin 2025. This is my first Hobonichi Cousin. I did have a Hobonichi Avec last year, and I bought them completely under influence. Like, I saw them online, I thought they were beautiful, and when I first saw them, I thought, okay, I don't need that. That's not necessary for me. And it's true, I don't need it. But I have really enjoyed using it. So my intention with this Hobonichi Cousin was to use it for poetry and as a reading journal. So far it kind of looks like this. I have my reading tracker on the weekly pages, and then the reading tracker is on the monthly pages, and then on the weekly pages I have been writing haiku that interest me, so from different sources, writing different haiku, and I have been putting some imagery in there as well. And then on the daily pages, I've been writing, I started off mostly just writing poems that I like. So when I came across poems which I like, I would write them in here. And sometimes I try to explain a little bit about why I liked them or what was interesting to me about the poem. And I also wrote my book reviews for any books which I completed. And more recently, I've been using it more for my own writing. So for writing my kind of ongoing fiction and poetry projects onto these pages. So that's about as far as I've got. I also have my TBR list, so the books which I want to read. And I set myself the challenge back in February that I would read through the books which I have before buying new ones, which I'm doing pretty well on. You can see I didn't completely stick to that. I got Piranesi after I had made this list and had not yet read everything on the list. But I think I'm doing quite well. I will probably complete this list in the next couple of months. I'm not sure about the Decameron. I might have to read that in several installments. It probably won't be a one-time read because it is a collection of short stories, and I might at some point need a break. So I'll probably break that one up into several reading sessions. So this is my reading journal, which is a work in progress, and I'm kind of exploring different ways to use it as the year goes along. I also have a personal journal, I guess a kind of memory keeping journal, which I won't flip through because it does contain more private information, or at least like the names of my children and that kind of thing. So this is also a Hobonichi. It's a Hobonichi Hon, and I really enjoy using it, but I've had so little time. I'm often having to fill up the pages with nonsense, and I think that I possibly won't continue with this next year as a practice because I don't really have time to keep up with it. So last year, when I became kind of interested in this kind of journaling, I bought some stickers and washi tapes, and I've been using those in this book when I haven't had enough time to fill pages with writing. The pages are quite small. You don't actually need to write very much to fill a page. Nevertheless, I don't have time every day for that. So I have been sort of falling back on stickers and collaging to fill in the spaces in the journal, which is why it has also gotten a little bit chunky at this point. It's okay. I think the chunkiness is probably fine. And the other journaling practice which I've been doing is connected to The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I imagine that most people have heard of this book. It's been around a long time. I already completed The Artist's Way about 15 years ago. I think I did it for the first time, and I found it super helpful at that time to kind of unblock my creativity and enjoy writing again. So The Artist's Way is a 12-week course book in which each week there's a kind of a topic to think about, and then there are some prompts with different questions to think about. And every day also you're supposed to complete the morning pages, which is 3 pages of free writing, by which I mean just a kind of brain dump. So you write without censoring it yourself. In addition, you're supposed to take a artist's date once a week. So once a week, go and do something just for the artist in you without other people. I gave away my copy of The Artist's Way, and so I rebought this one fairly recently, and I thought I would give it another try to kind of get things flowing again and reboot my creativity. It hasn't gone that great, to be honest. Although I think that the morning pages is great in principle, it doesn't work for me in practice. I have to get up very early, get everybody ready for school, everyone's breakfast, everyone's lunch, and then get to work. And there is certainly no time in the working week mornings for 3 pages of writing. It's just not realistic. And similarly, it's actually quite challenging to think how it's possible to go on an artist date once a week. I mean, I suppose it might be possible, but it's really very difficult. And so for my artist date, I have been doing a tarot reading, and I've been enjoying it that way, just having a special tarot reading each week with a tarot deck and an oracle deck, and enjoying a kind of 3-card tarot and 1-card oracle as a sort of journey with my decks and with my inner artist, as Julia Cameron says. Similarly, I don't always find connection with the kind of prompts that she is setting, like the kind of challenges that she talks about, like having toxic friends or people who've harshly belittled you in the past. This is not my problem. Like, I completely understand how valid it is for people to explore those issues, but my main issue is time and practicalities. And so I did fill this notebook with morning pages. I won't flip through it because it's obviously personal. You can see it's a pretty slim A5. I'm not sure exactly what size this is. I was really just writing 1 page most days because this is a grid paper, pretty small grids, similar to the Hobonichi, and I felt like 1 page was actually quite a lot. If I'd have been writing on blank paper, I would have filled 2 or 3 for sure. The benefit of doing the morning pages free writing is that you get out of your head all of the things which are weighing on your mind, the thoughts which keep repeating and repeating and repeating. And so it really does help in getting to understand your thought habits. And in this way, I think it's a really great idea. Practically speaking, it wasn't really necessarily what I need at this time, and so I'm probably going to put away this practice again and see if it calls to me at a future time. And so that's it for the month of May. Thank you for watching. I hope you found something of interest in the video and enjoyed taking a look at the books, decks and journals which I have been using this month. Feel free to ask any questions about any of the things I was talking about. If you're curious or you want to know more, just drop me a question in the comment. And I very much hope that you have enjoyed your month of May. And I wish you the best wherever you are. And I hope to see you again soon.